Hi guys, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to have a look at the new, remodeled and vastly improved tone curve in PhotoLab 8. Okay, the tone curve has been substantially remodeled in PhotoLab 8. We've got the addition of a luma curve which controls the luminance. We've got presets with mouse over, so you can see immediately the impact of the presets on the photograph. And altogether it's a much more powerful tool than it was. I would say quantifiably this really does bring the tone curve into play as a major part of your development curve, and I think it's well worth having a look at. So what I'm going to do in this video is we'll go through with color charts to show the effect of the various controls in the tone curve, the effect of making alterations at the dark and the light end of the tone curve. For a really detailed deep dive into the RGB curve, you can look at an earlier video that I made, which will be up above here in the video. This one is going to really focus on the new tooling in PhotoLab 8. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, just by way of comparison, we're going to have a look here at PhotoLab 7. So looking at the tone curve, here it is. You've got the master curve and red, green and blue. So this is effectively an RGB curve, and we can see the results of this in our picture. We raise the lights, drop the lights, drop the darks, raise the darks, and reset. So that's pretty much it. We've got gamma. We can control gamma here. But this is, by comparison with PhotoLab 8, fairly rudimentary. So let's have a look now at PhotoLab 8. Here is the new tone curve, PhotoLab 8, and three really significant differences. This really is a completely different and remodeled tool. So let's have a look. For a start, you've got presets. So this is a blank preset, linear. We've got light contrast. You've got mouse over, so you can see the effect immediately on the preview. So we go from light contrast, medium contrast, strong contrast, and then we look at luminance. This is the second big innovation. You've got a curve which controls luminance only, without altering the saturation of the colors. It simply adds luminance and takes away luminance. So light contrast, luma, medium contrast, luma, strong contrast, luma, and then you've got cross-process RGB, you've got faded RGB, you've got negative RGB. One of the perhaps unseen or unheralded advantages of having the presets, of course, is that you can unravel them to understand better what they're actually doing. So if we have a look at the luma, light contrast luma, we're in the luma curve here. This is the yellow curve. And you can see they've modelled an S-curve. It's dropped the luminance on the darks a little bit, raised it in the lights a little bit. Go to strong contrast and you see a much more accentuated curve. Now if we go to faded, there's something interesting going on here, because what's happened is you've got these other curves and you can see that they've altered the black and white point. So if we go back into RGB, we can actually change this back if we want to and make it unfaded. So you can use this to try to understand better what's actually going on behind the scenes. Okay, so reset all, and let's have a quick investigation of what actually is going on behind the scenes. So we've got the same master curve. So we've got the master RGB curve, we've got individual red, green and blue curves, but this is really useful because this is a visual reminder of what these curves actually do. So we've got red accentuating the reds is going to make it redder, and taking the accent away is going to introduce cyan into the picture. Reset, so green, accentuating the greens is going to bring green into the picture, and magenta if you take the green away. Reset, go to the blues, you're going to bring more blue into the picture or more yellow. Okay, and luma is simply altering the luminance values in the picture. So what we're doing here, to clarify, is we're taking dark areas, so probably this area here, and some of this area, and raising that will make those areas brighter. And you can see this immediately if you look at these areas. So it's making those areas brighter and darker, but it's leaving pretty much these areas alone. Okay, so that's the tool in real life. Now you can also use the tone picker here. So if we would go to use the tone picker here, and we'll just pick on this. So I think there it is, and this is perhaps a slightly better use of it. You can see how that's working. Now you can still move your black point, so fade it, accentuate it. You can still move your white point, so fade it, accentuate it. So we've got everything that we had before, and we've got the tone picker as a shortcut, and we've got the luma curve as a shortcut to adjusting luminance values in the picture. Now let's see what these do under the covers. Okay, so we've seen that we've got a lot more controls. Let's have a look and see how these work with colour charts, so we can get a view away from the complexity and the confusion of a picture in a straightforward colour chart, what's happening. Alright, quick reminder of how these tools work in relation to colour charts. I find this very useful because often in a picture you've got such a range of tones that it's quite difficult to see what's happening and where it's happening. So let's have a look at these colour charts in relation to the histogram. So we can see here we've got a smooth gradient going black to white, and if we take the contrast tool, if we lower that contrast, you're effectively making that a shallower, flatter curve. If you heighten the contrast, you can see the blacks and the whites are now occupying a greater amount of that screen. So have a look in the histogram, taking the contrast away, minimizing the black, adding contrast, changes the histogram immediately. Okay, take that back to where it was, turn that off, look at the tone curve. We want to take the darks down, so we'd expect more black, and that's exactly what we're getting. With the lights, take the lights up, and you're pushing the middle, and you're increasing the amount of whites, and this is why this S-curve is effectively repeating with more strength, effectively, what's happening in the contrast curve. So we can reset that. Now, if we look at the hard mix here, this too is interesting. So if we take the tone curve off and we go up to contrast, watch the effect on the colours of first of all removing contrast, okay, and adding contrast. It's actually quite subtle. The contrast is different, and you can see particularly when we take the contrast away, watch the reds as I increase contrast there. Look at the magenta there, that's taking contrast away, that's adding contrast. Now when we go into the tone curve, let's take the darks down. And whoops, let's actually get a grip of it, and you're seeing pretty much the same effect. So the darks is very obvious in the blues, slightly less obvious in the greens, but it's there, and in the reds. And if we do the lights, you'd expect it to appear in the yellow, the pale blues, and so on. So take that up, yellow, take it down. You can see that very clearly is affecting more of the circle, but not really affecting the dark blues terribly much. And that's, you know, as you would expect. If you take the luma, let's take the middle value, and what we're seeing here is right across the board, you're seeing the luminance values change. Decreasing the luminance gives you more contrast. Okay? And gamma will have similar effect. Okay, reset all. Now if we go into the gradient, we can see what's going on between the pictures, or rather between the segments. So the gradient is a much more gradual cut compared to this hard cut. We now have the gradient, and we take our RGB curve. Let's go with the darks. Let's lighten the darks, and you can see immediately these light blues and this magenta here are impacting onto the dark blues. And take that away, and you see the dark blues. You see the influence going the other way. Okay, you can also see a little bit of impact from the reds on the yellows, and a little bit of impact from the greens. Take that up to the other end, and you'll see the lighter colours behaving in exactly the same way. So here you're seeing the yellows impact on the reds, you're seeing the green impact on the blues. So go to our luma, and you can see we're adding lightness all over the curve. We're taking lightness away all over the curve. Okay, now one more thing to have a look at here, which really brings all of this into sort of stark focus, is have a look at the histogram while we make some basic alterations. So we're taking the middle values in the histogram, and you can see those affecting predominantly the values in the middle, but it's also affecting the values at the ends to a lesser extent. If we reset that and remove those stoppers, we can now see that that's moving the whole thing to the right, moving the whole thing to the left. If we put those stoppers back, you're seeing how that's keeping these values intact, but it is allowing a drop after these values. So this is a way that you can really get to drill down in your use of the tone curve to isolate what's actually being affected in the picture. You can move these points around, and just to make the point, if I wanted to really restrict this to the middle of it, I can move my anchors and bring that down. You see immediately much starker boundaries between the colours, and that is because I'm not able to really affect too much what's going on beyond these anchors. I could have, of course, put more anchors in, and you know, that might be suitable in some types of picture. Let's reset. Let's have a look at the red. If I take my reds, look at the histogram, I'm just affecting the reds. Now, that's not really being reflected in the gradient, but the explanation for this is that the gradient is modelling red, green and blue values, and yellow is a mixture of red and green and so on. So these colours are not pure colours. So by moving the red, I am actually interfering with the scope of these other colours. But in the histogram, you can see it's only the red. Here it will only be the green, and you can see that quite clearly. Here it will be the blue. Okay, so these are isolating these values. Let's reset that, and we'll have a look at this in terms of the luma. And you will see this in the curve affecting the entire curve, left to right. Okay, we've seen how the tone curve tooling works with regard to colour charts. So before we move on to seeing how this works with a real picture, if you could just nip down below the video and tick in the like box, that would be fantastic. Every like helps this video to get out to people who are interested in the detail behind DxO PhotoLab 8. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, well, we do this every week, and there'll be dozens more videos coming down the line. And they will cover all aspects of photography, from DxO PhotoLab through to camera craft, through to various techniques, different software packages. We cover quite a wide range, so hopefully we'll see you further on down the line. Okay, let's get on and see how this works with a real photograph. Okay, so we've reset this picture, so this is as it came out of the camera, and let's have a look at what we can do with using the tone curve only. We'll have a look at the exposure as well, just to double check that that's fine. So I'm going to remove any preset from this. So we're going to go with no correction on the preset. So this is literally out of the camera. All right, first thing I'm going to look at is, in fact, the exposure, because you need this to be correct. It looks well exposed. Looking at the histogram, we could perhaps raise this a tiny little bit, but as we do that, we're losing quite a lot of definition in the hills over here. and in the sky, and I'd like to really keep that colour in the sky. Notice as we go up we're really bleaching the sky out, even though the histogram hasn't reached, it's not actually clipping, but aesthetically this is not a good look. So I'm going to go with what we've got, which is quite a decent contrast along the skyline, and we'll adjust to suit what we want in this picture. And let's get started. So I think what I will do, I'll skip straight over all of the tone and the contrast, and we're just going to work with RGB curve and luma. So I'm going to put a little bit more contrast in here. Now we've got a lot of this corresponds to this, corresponds to that in the RGB curve. We've got a lot of value in there, so we know that this is going to have a big effect on the picture. So we'll just drop that a little bit, and we'll take this area here. I don't want to go much higher than that. Okay, so I'm keeping my nicely picked out skyline here, and I quite like the way that's looking, so that would be a good set here. Now I want to accentuate the red in these rocks, and where do I want to accentuate it? Perhaps in the middle, so let's just take that, that's too much. Take that away. And this really is a game of very small increments indeed. And I don't want it necessarily to appear in the highlighted area here. So this is really touching this area. And my blue, I do want that to appear in the highlights. Now I've got a slight problem here because we've got this area which is where I want it to appear, but I don't want it to be reflected too much here. So what I might do is use the tone picker here and just choose that, and that's given me this area. Now let's see, we can see that that's getting bluer, but is it getting bluer down here? Yes, it is. So this might not be actually the answer that we think it is. So here I would tend to leave that more or less there. And with my luma, I'd like to just raise the darks a little. So I think now we've got quite a, we've moved this quite a long way. And the quickest way of doing that is actually to turn this turn curve off. So there's my original, there's my one just treated with the tone curve, and I think that's my raw. We've got a slight blue cast on the raw. We've removed that by manipulating the tone curve. And what we've got here is a much more lifelike representation. And this is before we get anywhere near the colour. Okay, so I think we've demonstrated the power of the tooling in the tone curve. It's a completely different beast than the version of PhotoLab 7. Now, I would, of course, this has been a slightly academic exercise in that I haven't used any other tooling. I would normally go on to use the colour tools, adjust the colour better, use control points and so on to adjust various individual parts of the image. But the point of this was really to highlight the functionality that we're getting in PhotoLab 8 with the newly revised tone curve, and I think we've probably covered that. Okay, so thanks very much guys, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Thanks a lot.